New Hampshire has a minimally regulated late fee framework, consistent with the state's overall live free or die approach to government regulation. The governing law is found in New Hampshire Revised Statutes, Chapter 540, which covers landlord and tenant relations, along with Chapter 540A, covering prohibited practices and general contract principles. If you're a landlord or tenant in New Hampshire, the state provides limited statutory guidance on late fees, and the lease governs most of the details. Let's start with the basics. New Hampshire does not impose a specific statutory dollar cap or percentage cap on late fees. There is no rule that says the fee must be under a certain amount or percentage. The fee is governed by the lease terms and general contract principles, specifically the requirement that the fee be reasonable and not function as an unenforceable penalty. New Hampshire does not mandate a grace period by statute. There is no state law requiring a specific number of days before a late fee can be charged. If your lease says rent is due on the 1st and a late fee applies on the 2nd, that's enforceable under New Hampshire law. However, standard practice among New Hampshire landlords is to include a grace period of 3 to 5 days, and most professional property managers use at least a short grace period. The key legal principle is reasonableness. Under New Hampshire contract law, a late fee is a liquidated damages provision, enforceable if the fee represents a reasonable pre-estimate of the landlord's anticipated damages and the actual damages from late payment are difficult to calculate precisely. A fee that is grossly disproportionate to the landlord's actual costs can be struck down as an unenforceable penalty. What's reasonable in New Hampshire? The state has a relatively expensive rental market, driven significantly by its proximity to the Boston Metro and the strong southern New Hampshire economy. Rents in Manchester and Nashua commonly range from $1,400 to $2,200. In more affordable areas, Berlin, Claremont, Laconia, rents are lower. A flat fee of $50 to $75 or a percentage-based fee of 5 to 8% of the monthly rent is generally defensible across New Hampshire's range of markets. New Hampshire's Consumer Protection Statute, RSA Chapter 358A, prohibits unfair or deceptive business practices. While this chapter primarily targets commercial transactions, it can apply to landlord-tenant relationships in certain circumstances. A late fee that is systematically excessive or that isn't properly disclosed could be challenged under the Consumer Protection Framework, which provides for treble damages and attorney's fees. The lease must clearly state the late fee terms. The lease should specify the rent due date, any grace period, the exact fee amount or formula, when the fee triggers, whether additional charges apply for continued non-payment, and whether the fee is defined as additional rent. New Hampshire courts expect clear written agreement. Oral arrangements about late fees are difficult to enforce and create unnecessary disputes. New Hampshire RSA 540-A lists certain prohibited landlord practices. While the statute doesn't specifically address late fees, it prohibits retaliatory conduct and other unfair practices. A landlord who suddenly begins enforcing late fees for the first time immediately after a tenant makes a habitability complaint or exercises another legal right could face a retaliation claim, even if the fee itself complies with the lease. Compounding late fees in New Hampshire are governed by the lease and the reasonableness standard. A single one-time fee after the grace period is the simplest and most defensible approach. Daily or weekly compounding charges must produce a total that's reasonable. A compounding structure that generates fees exceeding 15 to 20% of the monthly rent within a few weeks is increasingly vulnerable to challenge. Most New Hampshire landlords use a single flat fee to avoid complication. The interaction between late fees and the eviction process in New Hampshire is governed by RSA Chapter 540. New Hampshire requires the landlord to provide a written demand for rent, typically a 14-day notice, before commencing eviction for non-payment. The amount demanded must be accurate, including only legally compliant late fees. Whether unpaid late fees can be included in the demand depends on how the lease defines them. If the lease defines late fees as additional rent, they can be included in the total amount demanded on the 14-day notice. If treated as a separate charge, the landlord may need to pursue them independently. Best practice: define late fees as additional rent. New Hampshire's eviction process through the district court is moderately paced. The 14-day notice period followed by court proceedings means the timeline is longer than states with 3-day notice periods, but shorter than heavily regulated states. During this timeline, the late fee calculations must remain accurate and compliant at every stage. New Hampshire limits the security deposit to 1 month's rent, or $100, whichever is greater. The deposit must be held in a separate account. The landlord must return the deposit within 30 days and provide an itemized list of deductions. Unpaid late fees can be deducted if the lease authorizes the deduction and the fees are reasonable. Failure to return the deposit within 30 days can result in the landlord being liable for double the deposit amount. For tenants receiving Housing Choice Voucher Assistance, New Hampshire landlords should not charge late fees when the housing authority's portion is delayed due to processing. The tenant cannot control the authority's payment timeline. If the tenant's portion is paid on time, the fee should not apply simply because the total rent hasn't been received due to the authority's delay. New Hampshire does not have a significant active-duty military population. No major installations are located in the state. However, the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, technically located in Kittery, Maine but employing many New Hampshire residents, generates some defense-related rental demand in the Seacoast area. The SCRA applies to any active-duty service member renting in New Hampshire. New Hampshire's unique economic position as a no-income tax, no sales tax state adjacent to the high-cost Boston Metro creates specific rental market dynamics that affect late fee practices. From a practical standpoint, New Hampshire's rental market is driven largely by its relationship to the Boston economy. Manchester is the state's largest city and primary rental market. The economy is driven by healthcare, technology, financial services, and the spillover from the Boston metro economy. Many Manchester residents commute to Massachusetts for work, and their salaries reflect Massachusetts' wage levels, while their rents reflect New Hampshire's relatively lower housing costs. Rents in Manchester typically range from $1,400 to $2,000. Late fee enforcement is standard. Most Manchester landlords charge flat fees of $50 to $75 with a 5-day grace period. Nashua, the state's second-largest city, is even more tightly connected to the Boston economy. Nashua sits directly on the Massachusetts border, and many residents commute to Route 128 corridor employers. Rents in Nashua are among the highest in the state, driven by the commuter premium. The professional commuter tenant base generally pays reliably. Late fee enforcement is minimal. Concord, the state capital, has a moderate market driven by state government, healthcare, and legal services. Government employees pay reliably, and late fee enforcement is routine but not a dominant concern. Portsmouth and the Seacoast region have a premium market driven by tourism, the naval shipyard, technology, and quality of life appeal. Rents on the Seacoast are high for New Hampshire, and the professional tenant base is reliable. Hanover and Lebanon, home to Dartmouth College and the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, have a tight market with premium rents. The combination of university employment, medical center employment, and Dartmouth students creates strong and diverse demand. Keene, home to Keene State College, has a moderate market with some student influence. Plymouth, home to Plymouth State University, has a smaller student market. The Lakes region, Laconia, Meredith, Wolfboro, has seasonal dynamics. Summer tourism drives temporary demand, and seasonal workers may have irregular income patterns. The North Country, Berlin, Gorham, Lancaster, Littleton, has the most affordable markets in the state. Limited economic opportunity and population decline constrain demand. Late fee amounts should reflect the lower rent levels. A fee that's reasonable on a $2,000 Nashua rent is disproportionate on a $700 Berlin rent. One best practice for New Hampshire landlords: set your late fee at a level that reflects your actual costs and the local market. In the southern New Hampshire markets where rents are high, a fee of $50 to $75, roughly 3 to 5%, is standard. In more affordable northern markets, $25 to $40 is more appropriate. Another best practice: include a grace period of at least 5 days, even though New Hampshire doesn't mandate one. Southern New Hampshire tenants, many of whom are commuting to Massachusetts, are accustomed to the 5-day grace periods common in Massachusetts law. Meeting that expectation prevents disputes and demonstrates professionalism. A third best practice: apply your late fee consistently across all tenants. New Hampshire's diverse tenant base includes high-income Boston commuters, state government employees, students, seasonal workers, and lower-income residents. Selective enforcement creates fair housing risk. Document every late payment, every fee charged, and every communication. Consistent records protect you in any dispute. For the complete guide to New Hampshire late fee laws, visit tenantscreeningbackgroundcheck.com. Subscribe to our channel for every state in our late fee law series.